Hi, I'm Max Kaiser. This is the Kaiser Report. Yeah, we keep going. Presidents come and go. Countries come and go. Whole new solar systems are discovered. Doesn't matter. We keep going. Yeah, Stacey.
I'm going to call this episode Give Us This Day Our Daily Billions. Of course, that's the Wall Streeters, the big crybabies. We call them crybabies all the time. And they cry all the time for free money. And I realize that's why we have two economies going on. The real economy where the 99% live, and then the 1% economy where these bankers live and the corporate elite live. And there's never enough free money. They want more, 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 and more. And you can see that in the jobs numbers that came out this past week and a half. And what you saw is that it's boom times down there. It continues to be boom times. And you can see with the consumer spending that consumers are spending, life is going on. And yet, when you come to Wall Street, you see the nonstop interventions required, increasing, escalating interventions into the repo market. That's the overnight cash market. You see quantitative easing, more QE needed. You see interest rates that were cut again this week for that top 1%. So we have a tale here of two economies.
Without the ever-present constant drip of the free money, we would have a day of reckoning. And prices would revert back to reflect supply and demand. And it would be a catastrophic trapdoor opening underneath the U.S. economy. Because the U.S. won't do it for itself, China will do it for the U.S. in the form of announcing, as a surprise, 20,000 tons of gold and the introduction of a gold-backed cryptocurrency. This will kill the U.S. dollar, deader than a doornail. And it will be a Pearl Harbor type event. And it's coming in the next 6 to 9 months.
But the domestic situation here, and of course we're in New York City, so that means everybody knows we watch the cable news. You see it culturally and politically. The top 1% who are represented on the cable news are having a breakdown about the political situation, that it's all doom and gloom. And yet on the rest of the world, the rest of the country, if you drive across the country, you'll see nobody's hysterical like them. Nobody's constantly triggered like them. So again, we come back to the economy and the tale of the two economies. There's been a discrepancy between the stock and the bond markets for the past year and a half, 2 years that we've been noting that bond markets are pricing in and looking like there's total disaster on the horizon. Stock markets are at all-time highs. So which is it, right? U.S. Treasury says it is gearing up to issue a 50-year bond. The federal deficit, as you know, is up 26% last year to $984 billion. Again, that was to feed the 1%, because remember, they got $1 trillion worth of tax cuts. And obviously something had to pay for it. That was the future. The future generations are going to pay for those tax cuts. $984 billion deficit in 2019. So here they're looking at issuing a 50-year bond to pay for those crybabies today.
Extend and pretend. So there's always another bond to extend the maturity. There's always another quantitative easing program or a rate cut. There's never not been a rate cut environment for 40 years now. All over the world, there's been over 600 rate cuts by various central banks. And the money, if you're on the right side of the interest rate apartheid, is not only free, it's less than free. Central banks pay Jamie Dimon to borrow money. That's how easy it is for JP Morgan to make money. But they still have trouble making money because of what economists euphemistically call moral hazard. When you give a dog an unlimited amount of dog food to eat, that dog will eat itself to death. If you give Jamie Dimon an unlimited amount of quantitative easing to gorge on over there at JP Morgan, he will bankrupt the economy. So people who feel as though there's no roads and tunnels being built, life expectancy in America is dropping, infant mortality is rising, the millennials and Gen Z are going to face a bleak future. That's denial. That's denial being fueled and funded by this wallpaper money led by Donald Trump, who is the perfect president at the perfect time. A New York City real estate developer, part of the Wall Street property developing elite. He is America as American as apple pie.
I said it's a tale of two economies, and those economies are driven by their own separate monetary systems. So we see at the top 1%, I think why they see disaster happening is not only that they have an instinct that their assets are overpriced, the stock market, property markets, art market, but they also, there's no velocity of money in that top 1% economy. It's not circulating at all because, first of all, they're greedy. They 100 billion is not enough. They've got to compete with Jeff Bezos is worth 130 billion, so they need to save 30 billion more to even match him. So they're going to keep on accumulating it. Latest Fed data shows that there's well over $30 trillion held by the top 1% in this economy versus the bottom 50%, there's just $2 trillion, right? So that's the discrepancy there. Of that 30, it's close to $35 trillion the top 1% has. 4.7 trillion of it is just sitting in bank accounts, i.e. getting 0% interest rate. They're not even using it. It's just sitting there, dead money.
Well, they're hoarding, essentially. You know, people they laugh at people who collect old newspapers, and they have newspapers going back 30 years, and it's all stacked up in a warehouse. You know, they open up the storage garage, and it's like, why are you keeping all these newspapers for so many years? Because they're hoarders, and that's considered to be a sociopathologically less than ideal mental state. And yet, people like Jamie Dimon or Warren Buffett, they hoard cash. They have never had more cash, and they just put it in a bank account, and it's yielding near 0%. And it's just paper. They're just hoarding paper. It's not an asset in any meaningful sense of the word. And so these are the sociopaths that are governing the overall economy to make it easier for hoarders to hoard more paper at the expense of everyone else who is strung out on smack and defecating in the streets of San Francisco. At
the bottom 99%, the velocity of money is very active. It's flowing fast because everybody has to run faster and faster just to stay even. While the plutocrats at the top, the oligarchs, the plutocrats, the monopolists, the politicians, they're all just sitting on these piles of cash and giving each other free money. Again, I noted that the other reason why there's no velocity of money is they doubt the value of these assets can be maintained without ever increasing quantities of free money from the Fed. And you can see that from this chart. Here's why the stock market can never crash or the U.S. will slide into a historic depression. Financial assets are now 5.6 times GDP. If you can see that chart, this goes back to the 1970s through to 2000. When you and I were going to school, growing up, entering the workforce, working, it was normal between 2.5 and 3.5 GDP. Now it's 5.6 times GDP, and it's obviously requiring more and more freshly printed cash to keep it going up.
So you have this unusual situation of what I call interest rate apartheid. If you are getting unlimited free money at 0% interest, and you can buy assets with that free money and get income from those assets. If the Fed gives you $1 billion and you buy utility, if you're like PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, and it's privately funded, and people have to buy their utility to cook their scrambled eggs on, you have a monopoly position on the poor people. You're getting that monopoly income for free because you didn't pay any money to buy that asset, to buy that monopoly position. So it's worse than any oligarchic, monarchic period in the past. At least monarchs had the decency to go to war with each other, right, and kill a few people so that they died for something. But here people are dying for nothing. They're dying for nothing. The people who die in this economy for paper money barons are like negative interest rates. Their lives are worth less than nothing. That's why there's so many mass shootings in America. Their life is worth less than nothing in America.
This chart actually goes back to 1955 to 2000. And you see, this is what a chart looks like, the financial assets of an economy in an economy that hasn't been financialized. This is the business cycle. It's up, it's down, it's over exuberance, it's over depression. There's a cycle. It goes up and down. Everybody gets exuberant. Everybody gets depressed. There's blood on the streets. And that's when you buy, and that's when the economy starts growing again. Here, it's just total euphoria. This is when the Fed and the governments have just intervened, the treasuries and the Fed have just intervened permanently for that top 1%. And that top 1% is on the cable news shrieking outrageously anytime anything goes wrong. Of course, Jim Cramer was the embodiment of that during the financial crisis when he admonished the Fed in very hysterical terms that they have to come and intervene and save his friends at Bear Stearns, save his friends at JP Morgan, save his friends at Goldman Sachs, save his friends at AIG. He had to save them. And that, of course, they've done that ever since. And you can see that.
If you watch Fox Business News or CNBC, every single story about manufacturing, service economy, entrepreneurialism, IPOs, tech billionaires, every single story ends in the exact same way. What will the Fed do? Everyone is beholden to this enormous, you could call it monetary lactation on the mammary gland that is Jay Powell and the central bank in Washington. And you've got all these bankers, crybaby bankers. And there's James Cramer, the biggest crybaby of all, in the financial press, in the Wall Street Journal, in the Financial Times.
It is an out-of-control daycare center at the top, for the top 1%. Tune into the cable news if you can. If you're outside America, try to find it on YouTube. YouTube is, by the way, pushing the cable news with their new algorithm because they were crybabies, right? The top 1%, they didn't get their way in 2016, and they hate the people. All the deplorable bottom 99% out there, they're stupid. They're angry at them. They're talking to each other, and they're conversing with each other, and they're not listening to us. They screeched. They screeched. They screeched. Now Twitter and YouTube and Google have to change their algorithms to feed their numbers, make it look like people actually care about them and are not accidentally having to click on that clickbait of another YouTube ad from them being fed to them. So that's massage their numbers to make it look like people still care about CNN and MSNBC. But again, this is that cycle of that out of control crybabies in that room. And if you open the door into this daycare center, you've got the Wall Street bankers over there screaming at the Fed, "Give us more free money!" You turn into cable news, you'd see Rachel Maddow like, Russia, Russia, Russia. Then you see on the political, you tune into Congress on C-SPAN and you see, Nancy Pelosi saying or you've got to impeach this guy. And so there's hysteria at the top. The rest of the country, the 99%, the vast majority are not hysterical.
Because the Democrats don't control the Fed and they're equally baby-ish, they resort to the other weapon of the baby, poop their pants, right? So it's either the Republicans who get me more free money from mommy, or the Democrats threaten to poop their pants. That's the entire political debate in America today. And unfortunately, millions are dying from overpriced health care, starvation, and infrastructure collapse. But we don't talk about those people. We don't talk about the dead bodies coming back from foreign wars either. Too messy. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, much more.
Big tech and the political left unite. The age of the gag order is underway. And is Boris Johnson set to win and win big in the general election? Brexit, it would seem, has changed everything.
Hey, welcome back to the Kaiser Report. I'm Max Kaiser. Time now to return to the seer of Kingston, New York, the Trends Journal publisher, the man in the leather coat, Gerald Celente. Gerald, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Continue our conversation here. We left off with gold and talking about gold. Gold's made new all-time highs against currencies all over the world, against the euro, the pound, the Indian rupee, the Russian ruble, really everything except the U.S. dollar. But there is a notion that countries like Turkey, China, Russia are stockpiling hundreds and hundreds of tons of gold. Why are they doing that in the global slavelandia paradigm as you discuss it? What do these countries see that maybe others are not seeing?
They know that the money's worthless. It's digital currency backed by nothing and printed on nothing. And all they do is keep printing it. And that's why you're seeing the price going up. And that's why you're also seeing people still going into cryptocurrencies, because the people that don't believe in gold or silver or other precious metals are also going into cryptocurrencies because they know that the money is worthless. What did you have? Over 50 central banks already this year lower interest rates? And again, in the European Union, let's go down to minus 0.5 from 0.4. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And as you said, this is unprecedented in world history. You know, so that's why the people are going into it. And it was very important also, even though the dollar's gone down a little bit, it's still very strong compared to the other currencies.
Yeah.
And because gold is dollar-based, it takes more of those other currencies to buy gold. Yet gold prices are still remaining over $1,500 an ounce, even with the dollar strong. With a strong dollar, gold prices should be going down. So that's why they're doing it. They know that their currencies are worthless.
More and more, these countries are rebelling against the SWIFT system, the censoring of global trade, the sanctions by this empire of debt, the United States. The post-World War II period of the world reserve currency being the U.S. dollar seems to be fading, and we seem to be entering a new world, a new century, where the dollar, I think, let me get your thoughts on this idea, that we're going to have a Pearl Harbor type moment where China opens the trapdoor on the dollar by saying, you know what, we actually own not 2,000 tons of gold, but 20,000 tons of gold. And we're going to launch a gold-backed cryptocurrency to trade with everybody outside of the U.S., outside of the New York Fed, outside of SWIFT, and we're going to blow the U.S. dollar out of the water. Is something like that, do you see something like that happening? Because it seems, as you point out, that trade wars lead to currency wars, lead to hot wars. I believe that's one of your observations. We're on the cusp of a hottish type warlike situation, Gerald. Your thoughts?
I agree with you 100%. And also what China just did now recently announcing that they're going to be doing more with the euro and using that as their reserve currency and not the dollar. They're all tired of the dollar being the dominant currency. But at this point, it's going to take something like that to be the black swan event, like you're pointing out. So it also could be all of a sudden, and they're doing it already, no more petrodollar. We're not going to buy oil in petrodollars. And we're going to buy it in our own currencies. And it's already happening with Russia and other countries and China and Iran. So yes, it's going to be, again, go back to the British pound. It was the premier currency in the early 1900s, and it started to decline slowly, and then all of a sudden it was gone. The same thing could happen to the dollar, particularly as our debt levels keep increasing. They keep pumping out more money, and they keep lowering interest rates to devalue the dollar. So I agree with you 100%, and China's going to be the one behind it, because the 20th century was the American century. As I see it now, the 21st century is going to be the Chinese century, because the business of China is business. The business of America is war. And you don't make money with war. Only the very few do. And China, with their Belt and Road Initiative and on and on and on, and 1.4 billion people, they're going to control a lot of the finances. Already they do. They're going to control more of the world.
Who's got more horrible secrets that we'll never hear about? Jeffrey Epstein or Saudi Arabia?
That's a tough one, man.
Saudi Arabia, of course, has a lot of very horrible secrets to tell in relation to 9/11. The families are trying to sue them, and the government's saying, no, that's protected information, even though we have overwhelming evidence that they were behind 9/11. But it's kind of remarkable that how the U.S. government would shelter the Saudis in this particular case. Is that also feeding into the protests around America, that they realize that the U.S. government is in bed with mass murderers like this?
No, I don't think most people know that at all. And how about America being a mass murderer? You know, that guy Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties Al-Qaeda. We got to get rid of him. You know, I don't like that guy Gaddafi. I want him out of there. I don't like that guy Assad. I want him out of there. Most Americans don't have a clue what's going on in Saudi Arabia. They don't know anything about what's a Yemen. You know, they don't know that America's under Obama and under Trump selling them all the weapons to kill what? It's the worst humanitarian crisis on earth. and it's not even reported. But hey, we abandoned them Kurds over there, like Kurds in Way. Oh, how about America being illegally in another country? Could you get that in your head? You're not supposed to be there? No, so the people have no clue what's going on. But I agree with you. They have a lot of dirt in Saudi Arabia that they're keeping under that sand that they're not going to be letting out. Oh, they had the Davos, what are they called? Davos in the desert. Oh, yeah, last year, nobody went because of what happened to that guy Khashoggi. But this year, they're all back.
You mentioned blockchain there in China. We talked about this. And apparently, they're going ahead with their cryptocurrency. They're pretty open about it being a means to avoid U.S. imposition of sanctions. And we're looking at a de-dollarized world. Also, I see that one of the major Russian aluminum companies, because of sanctions, they're moving away from aluminum. They're going to start mining Bitcoin. That de facto implies that the government is mining Bitcoin. So as a strategic reserve, this would be a major country now acknowledging that along with gold, we're going to be hoarding Bitcoin. How will that change the complexion? Because Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. It's kind of like a Sputnik moment, right? So Russia was the first in outer space with the satellite. It'll launch the space race. We got a new crypto hashing mining race on our doorstep. Russia is making a bold move here. Is the U.S. and Congress in the U.S. is still thinking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency from the point of view of misinformed kindergarten. So they have no idea what they're morons. Brad Sherman in California is a functional idiot. He has no idea what he's talking about. Is this going to put America at an additional strategic disadvantage now in the 21st century? You've got China, who's now going to pull the trapdoor on the dollar. Russia potentially going into Bitcoin mining. I mean, is the U.S. What do they got in response to this, Gerald?
Well, you said it. They're in the 21st century. America's still stuck in the 20th century. And to call, what's that guy you said was really a moron?
Brad Sherman.
Oh, how about Mitch McConnell? How about Nancy Pelosi? How about Dianne Not-So-Feinstein? How about Lindsey Graham? How about Chucky Schumer? They're all morons and idiots and jerks and psychopaths, sociopaths, and megalomaniacs. They're politicians. Google up the definition.
But they don't want to be in power, though. If they did, they wouldn't blow their entire political capital on Russiagate hoax and now Ukraine hoax.
Again, this is where their minds are. They're just wasting our time and wasting our money. We're dealing with very ignorant people that are bringing down the country. It's in front of us. So, of course, they don't have a clue about cryptocurrencies or what the future is going to hold.
Now, recently, Mark Carney over there at the Bank of England, he was in the Jackson Hole, the annual event of bankers. He said the U.S. dollar no longer functions as a reserve currency. So here you have a central banker now breaking ranks with other central bankers. That's how bad things are. Of course, Mark Carney was discovered he was involved in LIBOR rigging in the UK, so he's not exactly such a credible guy. But their idea is to replace the dollar with a synthetic IMF cryptocurrency. They're going to roll all their bad debt, right? There's $100 trillion in bad debt in the global central banks. They're going to roll it forward to an IMF special drawing right cryptocurrency to bail everybody out. Is that going to work, Gerald?
It's perfect. It's the International Mafia Federation. So, yeah, it's the mafia group. Of course it's not going to work. You know, that's all it is. It's a mafia. And what you said, Carney was also a member of the Goldman Sachs gang, wasn't he, before that?
I believe so. And also he played hockey in college. He was a goalie. Like, goalies, they take a lot of pucks to the head. And they don't think straight necessarily all the time. It's a little crazy in the brain. So, Gerald Celente, you're based in Kingston. It's one of the most historic towns in America. They are revitalizing. They're regrowing. That's a rebirth situation. You're attracting hipsters like yourself. I notice you get the sideburns long now. So it's all about, sticking. That's the trend. Is everyone in Kingston, do they now have long sideburns? Do I need to grow my sideburns long now, Gerald Celente?
What it is the people there are who they are and who they want to be without anybody telling them what to do. It took me a lot of years, but I finally came up with it. I was not put on this earth to take orders from anybody. I don't give them, I don't take them. And that's the attitude in Kingston. It's, again, this is where the seeds of democracy was sown. You and Stacy were there. You saw the beauty of, you were in the 1774 Academy, you know, for one of the first public schools in America. John Vanderlyn, the famous Hudson River painter, whose work is in the Capitol Rotunda. Oh, John Jay. Oh, that guy. Oh, yeah, he was a judge over at the courthouse over there. And when the first capital of New York State, the Constitution that was written for Kingston, over 70% of America's Constitution comes from there. So that's what we're feeling. We're feeling the freedom of what this country gave us, and that's why I bought those buildings. Because I couldn't be me if I was a Napolitano born in Altavilla Appena, Vica Quenz. I'm only me because I'm a Napolitano born in the Bronx, born to be free.
Oh, speaking of the Bronx, how about your fellow Bronxian there, AOC? What? She's a kingmaker in the Democratic Party.
She certainly is.
Right? So do you see any hope on that side of the aisle at all?
Well, again, you know, look what happened. All the Democrats voted against Trump for pulling the troops out of Syria. And you're hearing, you know, we're 15 minutes from Woodstock, New York, over in Kingston. And I call them all these people with their quiche-eating grins and balsamic smiles. They're all going, oh, how could we abandon the Kurds? How could we abandon the Kurds? What are you doing over there? You have no right being there. You're in a foreign country, a sovereign nation that did nothing to you. Oh, but we're stopping ISIS. Now, grow up with this stuff. What are you talking about?
See, Barack Obama's now walking away from the woke culture, saying, grow up. Yeah. I mean, that's what put him into office. Anyway, Gerald, love to chat, but we got to go. Next time we'll be in Kingston.
All right,
for another event.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the Kaiser Report.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Kaiser Report with me, Max Kaiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Gerald Celente of the Trends Journal. If you want to catch us on Twitter, it's Kaiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.